Welcome to the Shame-Free Sex podcast. I'm your host, Brielle Starr from shamefreesex.com. By tuning in today, you are taking your next bold step towards fully embracing your authentic sexual self, absolutely shame-free. It's time to take your power back from shame and experience the life of your dreams, both in the bedroom and beyond. Let's embark on this transformative, shame-free journey together. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Shame-Free Sex podcast. I'm your host, Brielle Starr, and today I am joined by the lovely Yanique Bell. And we are going to be talking about Molly's erotic journey from the new show, Dying for Sex. I highly recommend this show, and I also highly recommend that you watch it before listening to this episode because it is absolutely packed with spoilers. This whole episode today is a spoiler. And I would also love to note that this series was actually adapted from the true story of Molly and her sexual adventures following her terminal cancer diagnosis. Molly and her best friend, Nikki Boyer, created a podcast together documenting the journey, and this was later adapted into what Yanique and I will be talking about today, the show Dying for Sex. And Nikki Boyer actually did serve as the executive producer on the show, which is just fabulous to keep in mind as well. And this show does cover a lot of really intimate and delicate topics. Today, Yanique and I will be talking about all things from BDSM to love, life, and death. So get ready for a really profound and heartfelt episode as we discuss this beautiful show and beautiful journey. So thank you so much for joining me yet again on the podcast, Yanique. I'm so excited to talk with you about Dying for Sex.
Thank you for inviting me and also putting me on the show. I had seen some ads for it and I was like, oh, that piqued my interest. But gosh, what a show. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to discuss. It's so endearing. And every single character, I think I had something that I loved about every single character.
Yes, I love that you made that point. There was so many exceptional characters. Like every character just played such a beautiful role. I think it was beautifully written as well. And I know they got a lot of support from real life cancer patients to try to make it as accurate as possible in that sense. So, yeah, it was just amazing. I can't wait to talk some more about it. And of course, on the sexual and erotic side of things, there were countless exceptional moments throughout this show full of sexual discovery, healing, and growth. And I think this show really demonstrated just how important sexuality is and can be for people to really explore and heal all the different aspects. So I'd love if we could talk about just some of our favorite moments from Molly's erotic journey. Did you have anything right away that came to mind for you, a favorite moment or time?
Yeah, kind of going off of what you were already saying, which is it does help us to see in someone else's journey, like how much sexuality impacts like every area of our life. Like you come alive, right? When you reclaim your sexuality. And we see Molly, not that she wasn't, fully living into her life, but you can tell there was something that was missing. And one of my favorite parts, is actually that moment. I think it's like the first episode or second episode where they're kind of, asking her what does she want to do after her second cancer diagnosis. She's contemplating, okay, what do I want to do at this time that I have left? Do I want to go and check off the bucket list items, travel and see the world and see things I haven't seen before? And she realizes her bucket list item is actually her sexual journey. And I think that's just like, that speaks to just how important this aspect of our lives is, that it's like, yeah, this is something that I actually haven't explored fully yet. And I want to get to know this part of me before I go. And I want to experience, because I think it's more than just like experiencing her orgasm. It's like who she became as a result of that journey. And oh my gosh, it gives me chills. It gives me chills because I think about my own journey as well. And that's why I love this work so much. It's because it calls us into our full selves. And you see her as she's going on her journey, it teaches her so many life lessons and life skills. that you can tell you can track the difference from the beginning of the show till the end. I don't know if you caught this, but like even just the way that she embodies herself and like the way that she talks to people, she's not really nervous in the beginning. She's like she's having conversations with her doctor, but she's not really advocating for herself. And I was just like, girl, if you don't tell this man what you need, right? Like this is I felt this urgency, like this is not the time to be, you know, waffling or whatever. This is your life and these are your last moments. So stand up for yourself, speak your truth. And you see her step into that by the end because of her journey. She's able to like actually express herself and own her presence. Yeah, you could go ahead. I have more favorite moments, but yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, you described that so beautifully. And that was actually my first one as well. I think obviously it's, such a pivotal moment for her because it leads her to this erotic journey that she goes down. And yeah, there are huge shifts in just the way that she carries herself. She definitely, throughout the course, quite early on, is exhibiting all these signs of just like letting go of so much shame and just really being her and slowly working towards that specifically in her sexuality as well. So yeah, it was beautiful. And I know in that conversation with, I believe they called it her care social worker, Sonia, they
Mhm.
they were talking and she realized that having an orgasm with someone outside of herself was her goal. It was like her deepest bucket list desire. And they also ended up talking about leather and all of these things that kind of showed that she was going to have this interest in exploring kink and things further down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, sorry, go ahead.
oh, you go
No,
ahead.
I just like had this thought as you were saying that. I mean, what are the chances that
Right.
your social worker is going to be like into it and like be able to encourage you in that way? Like, oh, it's so beautiful. I love knowing that this was someone's story as well. That component of it makes the story even sweeter that this was someone's real life journey. But yeah, keep
Yeah,
going.
no, totally. I agree. I would say Sonia was one of my favorite characters by far. I think without her, Molly might have not stepped into this erotic journey as thoroughly. She had Nikki's support, but definitely having someone right there who was so supportive and like, yes, if that's your goal, then let's pursue that. And
Hmm.
yeah, that is so rare, I would imagine, for most people growing up. If there was a desire like that, it's not something you would generally, one, express, and two, then feel unwavering support from a random woman you don't even know. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it just makes you wish that like more people, I don't know, that there was more of like more space to speak about that, more avenues to talk about that. Because I think a lot of times when you're going through toxic shame, the what comes up is you start to think that you're the only one going through it, or like, in this, of course, she is also a sexual abuse survivor, and there's so many things with that where you don't feel like it's appropriate to bring it up. And I think Sonia was like, she felt like a spiritual doula, like she really guided her through that journey so beautifully and gave her that support that truly I don't think she would have been able to step into this without Sonia, and also without the circumstances being what they are. And I'm curious what you think about that, because when I first went into the show, it kind of brought up feelings of like, oh, but I wish every woman early on in their life, like, embraced their sexuality or felt that permission to do so. But by the end, I was like, actually, that I don't know that her journey, there was anything wrong with her journey. Like, as we learned about her, sexual abuse history, and like, it's just like, I think this was perfect. I think this was like a perfect journey on every level, like spiritually, like it's just so well timed. I felt like the cancer actually gave her the permission to let go. It actually was almost a form of um, power play.
Yeah.
I don't know if you resonate with that. What are your thoughts on that?
No, absolutely. I mean, I think, of course, it depends on everyone's beliefs, but I thought about that as well throughout watching it, that so many people, we end up getting stuck in our daily routines, and that's just how it is for the rest of our lives. And so, of course, something terrible happened to her for her to be able to explore these other avenues. But there was a lot of beauty in that as well, because without that, that circumstance might have never happened, and all of this exploration might have never occurred, and it could have gone on being the same thing over and over for the rest of her life. So, by no
Yeah.
means was it a good thing, but I think there was, yeah, a lot of beauty to be found in it, like you said as well. A lot of, if
Yeah.
that happened, not many women end up breaking out of their marriage or breaking out of their shell and really going for what they want, because there's this sense of I have forever to do that, or I need to stay where I am because I have forever. So, yeah, I think that'd be an interesting thing to consider as well, just this concept of having forever and how that actually might hold us back in some ways. Did you have any thoughts about that?
Girl, yes. Those are like I was fascinated of like thinking about that last night as I was reflecting because I just was sitting with it like actually, you come into the show and you're like, this is terrible. You don't want to hear that news that your cancer has returned. And then, as I'm like processing it, I'm like, actually, she could have lived her whole life, with Steve, who I actually like Steve. I actually think so. Steve is her, for those who maybe don't remember, Steve was her husband. I think they're still technically married, even by the end,
To the
because
end, I think so, yeah.
yeah, she needs his insurance, and who's gonna go through a divorce when it's just silly. Um, but I actually like Steve. I felt like they were well paired, well matched for who they were at in that chapter of their life. Like I think they both, and you see it in Steve where he's also kind of avoiding his sexuality a bit. He's very he's very much living into his caretaker and codependent role of just like I'm just here to take care of you, which you naturally go into when you have someone in your family who's going through that. And I actually think they both are kind of avoiding a wound. It's not the same wound, but they came together because there was like an understanding. There's like, I actually think they were well paired for that chapter of their life. But now, as she's looking at the next few months that she has, it's like, uh, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work if I'm going to really allow myself to experience this. And that's actually my second favorite moment is actually just the ease with which she just gave him the boot. Actually, we're done. Like, oh my gosh. Um, and it's something that would take I think all of us quite a long time to get to that point, right? And I think that's how the like structure of it's hard because I think the diagnosis actually gave her structure. It actually gave her the structure to feel free. And that's why I feel like the diagnosis actually became almost like a wider metaphor for BDSM in general. Like it's almost like she had to submit to the experience in order to find the freedom in it. And I just think that's beautiful.
That was, you said that so beautifully. I love that you just said that. That was
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. Yeah, that would my mind, I'm just like, yeah, that was lovely. And oh, yeah, thinking about Steve, I did find a lot of the things he said rather, quite frankly, stupid, but at the same time I was very thankful for the support that he did provide to her throughout the journey. He eventually, did let her go and do what she was going to do, but still allowed her to be on the insurance. He didn't get like insane or outlandish or anything. There was the one scene with he was like introducing his new partner, I believe, to her while she was in the hospital, and I was like,
Lord.
that is just
Oh my
stupid.
goodness.
Yeah, I was like, that is so random. And then I believe, didn't her pup play partner though come in like during that interaction?
That was one of my favorites. Favorite.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like I mean part of it I think is probably how the story is written. You want the comedic relief, and you're kind of pointing out the just buffoonery that I think humans can display. And in terms of Steve and like just the things that he says, where it's like you just don't get it, but you're supportive.
Yeah.
And we're grateful for you. I do think, I don't know. I think he showed up for her. There's a lot of good qualities, I think, in Steve, even though he wasn't there when it comes to, the sexual part of her journey that she was ready to explore. I think there was a lot. Um, they just feel like really good friends. That's how I was feeling in the beginning. Like these are really good friends. I don't know if they're sexually like a match, but they're really good friends, and he showed up, as a friend till the very end. It's just funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. He was always there to the extent that he could be there and even beyond in some of those circumstances. And yeah, it was really refreshing. I did feel like there was always that support there that a lot of people might not have. Like she was quite lucky, I think, in this circumstance to have Nikki, her friend, to shift and move into Nikki's care and kind of that backboard to fall on if she really needed to. I think Steve would have always been there for her no matter what, for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Nikki, Nikki, Nikki. What are your thoughts on Nikki?
I loved Nikki. I mean, she's just a fabulous character, so funny and stands up for herself and stands up for Molly all the time. I do think at times it was a bit of an unhealthy dynamic. I don't know as much as you. I know you work a lot in the realms of codependency and such, so I'd love to hear what you have to say, but I think overall their friendship is beautiful. Maybe some more boundaries could have been beneficial though if that had happened from the start.
Mm. Yeah, I think, Nikki. So I actually have experience with those who have passed away with cancer in my life. And so I think that's also why I'm a little bit more generous with Steve, because it's such a unique diagnosis in that you just show up differently. You don't know when, sometimes you don't know. Um, it's like living with like this thing constantly like hovering over you. You don't know if it's going to come back, if the treatments are going to work. And it's such a difficult thing to navigate. And I think Nikki, similar, I had the same, like similar feelings about Nikki's journey as I did with how the cancer actually allowed Molly to submit. I think Nikki more. Mm, Almost like you can tell she knew she was out of balance, but she was choosing, and it felt like a trust fall. Like it felt like the choices she made in that moment. And I have a dear friend who I'm like, if she was going through this, I probably would have done the same, to be honest, because the love for this friend is that strong. And she just kind of submitted to the experience and like trusting that it's going to work out. Like she'll pick up the pieces at the end, and you see that there's this scene where I think her name is Amy, the like weird hospice lady who
I
loves
think
death.
so. Yeah.
But so Amy's just is describing the experience of dying, and it's really hard to listen to as someone who loves the person who's dying. It's very hard to hear. And Molly asks her mom, "Hey, come sit with me," and Nikki as well. And Nikki says, "Actually, I'm gonna hold myself. I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna hold myself through this." And I just felt like that's what she's doing throughout this journey. She's kind of finding this inner strength within her. I think she didn't even know that she could love this deeply, or that she loved Molly this deeply. I think she knew she loved Molly a lot, but I don't think she really knew. And I think she actually says this in the last episode where she's like, I won't be there at the beginning of a life, as in like she probably won't have kids, but she'll be there in the end. Like she showed herself through this experience that she will love you till the very end. And it unlocked something within her. And it just felt like this power within her own right. So yes, from the outside, and there's people who are pointing out, oh, you're being codependent, da 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 da. But I actually think the situation is unique, and Nikki knows this isn't for forever. This is like a specific chunk of time, and I'm gonna give it all my all, and I'm gonna be fully here in it, and I'm gonna take the growth I'm gonna grow as much as I can to fill this role that Molly needs. And Molly even expresses, I don't want you to give up on your life. I didn't ask for this. And Nikki's never really like guilting her about it, because she recognizes it's a choice that she's making within herself. And I think that's kind of the difference sometimes with codependency is it's almost like it's automatic, it's an impulse. And not Molly, Nikki actually presents in the beginning. I don't know that she's entirely codependent in the beginning. I think this is actually a choice that she's making to be this provider and be this caregiver in this chapter of Molly's life. So I think she knows that she's going to pull herself out and she does pull back. Meanwhile, I think codependents, we struggle, right? There's so much guilt, there's so much shame. It's like you can't even make that choice. But I think what makes us different and why I see the parallels with BDSM is because it's a choice that Nikki is making.
Beautifully said. Thank you for sharing your perspective on that. And after hearing that, yeah, there's definitely a lot more going on there. I really like how you described it as a free fall, essentially. She kind of just dropped into this role suddenly. And it was clear, especially in the first few episodes, that she was not used to being organized or structured in any way. And she did end up really working to take on that role and taking care of Molly in a really beautiful way. So yeah. And of course, yeah, there's also the circumstance of she knows that it's not forever. Nikki knows that it's not a forever thing. And so being able to, once again, she had the ability to overall commit and be there for Molly was really amazing. So, yes, thank
Yeah, I kept thinking about that because I was like, there's so many choices that I saw the characters making in order to accommodate the special moment in Molly's life, like the end of Molly's life. And I just was like, oh, if only we could treat each other with that level of acceptance and tenderness. Because I even feel like, so there's a point where Molly is sharing her sexual journey with like everyone in the support group, the cancer support group. And like I can tell, like, not, I feel like if these women weren't in stage four, maybe they'd have their judgments, right? Like about what she's doing, but they're all just kind of like, whatever. Like,
you.
like, and I just wish that we all had that attitude, just baseline. Like, yeah, like this makes you happy. You have your one life to live, live it. I'm happy for you and I'm happy for what I'm doing, which is different, right? And it's not this place of judgment. And I just kept thinking, well, I wish we could live like this, but I also think
Yeah.
I understand that, we also are thinking of the long term, right? And that's why the diagnosis actually kind of served her well in her journey because it allowed that ability to be like, ah, fuck it. I'm just going to go.
Absolutely, yeah. It is inspiring to see through, of course, a make-believe show or a half make-believe, like based on a true story, how someone's the way that they be and show up in the world can completely shift. And she changed into this like vibrant, very confident, explorative woman, and just like seeing that happen was just so beautiful. It's kind of like a butterfly, As cliche as
Yeah.
that sounds, it really was like her exploration through BDSM and how it got it. I feel like it was so much more than just BDSM, of course, which is often the case, but it represented so many different things in her life. She was able to work through so many different things. And even like the scene, I do not remember her name, but they went to the sex party and met Sonya's ex-girlfriend. And then Molly ended up going back to like the mattress store or whatever it was, like some type of home goods store, and eventually like submitted to I can't I don't know why I'm blanking on her name, but submitted to the ex-girlfriend because that's what I have to say for right now,
Mhm.
and practiced saying what felt good and what felt okay and saying no, and the experience stopped immediately when she said no and when she said she wanted to stop. And right after that, she brought that into her experience with her doctor and told her doctor what she needed and told him what she needed for the experience to be feel safer for her. And I think that's just beautiful to see how BDSM and things like that can really transfer into our confidence and our ability to speak up in other areas of our lives as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I love the way you phrase that because I was like, what is it? Because it's like, yeah, she feels newfound authority in her life, but it's actually, she was asking from him what she needed to feel safe. I love the way that you put that because it really was like I'm gonna need you to stop, staying by the door, telling me horrible news. Come and treat me like a human. Come and sit next to me and have a conversation. And it was just, yeah, I loved seeing her journey. I think that was on my list of favorite moments, because it definitely, you really saw how like trauma and the complexity of emotions, how your sexual experience can help you relate to it differently and actually find safety within your feelings and how you're relating to another person. I don't know if I'm explaining that the best, but I think for her trauma recovery, what was most essential was having the permission to go and follow where her body was leading her. Because the body knows how to heal. And it's like her body was offering up avenues to pleasure that just, her old partner, Steve, couldn't really understand. I mean, I don't think he was just into sex with her at all, right? But there's a lot of people who may have, been like, no, I'm not into that, or been expressed disgust about what she wanted. And her body was like showing her, like, actually, this is what is feeling good. This is what's actually healing and helping this to process through and helping this like new version of you to emerge. And yeah, just being able to go at her own pace, to say yes and have that yes be reciprocated with eagerness, right? It's not just like, sure, but like I think her, Asanya and Nikki really, they gave her that eagerness that I think is often missing. Um, yeah, they really made her feel like she could go through this at her own pace, and I think that allowed her body to take her to new places.
Yeah, for sure. I love that you brought the body up into it. I think that was definitely present, like how she was kind of being led and slowly, I think over the course of the episodes, you could see her kind of waking up to her sexuality in a sense, like really starting to turn on and become aware of all of these different parts within her, all of these different sexual aspects. And of course, it
Yeah.
makes it so much easier when you have someone such as Nikki or Sonia who are supporting you so fully and so excitingly. Like almost any story that Molly told Nikki, Nikki was just like lit up and excited and enthusiastic about it. And that is kind of rare, I think. And it was really
Oh,
beautiful.
that's super rare. I
Yeah.
don't know if I've ever experienced that before. I was just like, wow. And it does make me want to listen to the podcast because I'm wondering if like if it was like, just adjustments to tell the story in a certain way, or if this is really how her friend presented, because I mean, that's incredible to find that in a friend, and just anyone is incredible. I loved it. I loved it. And there's this line towards the end. I think it's when she's in the like birthing the water. I don't know what they're called. Like it's like a pool, a tub for natural
Oh,
birth.
yeah.
And she says, and she's just like smile on her face, and you can tell she's like thinking back on her life. And she says, "My body did a good job. My body did." I tear up even thinking about it now because I think, why am I crying? Anyways, I've been crying a lot over this show. I think when you have a diagnosis like cancer, and also when you've survived trauma, oftentimes we can feel resentful to our bodies because it's not moving at the pace that we want it to. And she actually came through that experience and realized, actually, my body did a great job guiding me through this and offering up this experience of life that was complicated. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cry. It was complicated and like, yeah, it wasn't like a perfect journey, but it was perfect. Do you know what I mean? When you're like,
Yeah.
this was perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, you said that so beautifully once again. And yeah, no,
I'm
I
sorry.
totally I cried multiple times throughout watching the show. I think there's just so many different things going on, which is another really prevalent factor. There is that the trauma and of course the cancer, and then of course just the excitement of exploring sexually, but also working with the sexual shame. And yeah, I think that it's such a kind of closing moment. Of course, there's her bucket list moment, but then that was kind of just like a really fully embracing her life, I feel like in a sense, she was really like, I did this, I explored, I lived it, it was kind of acceptance, I think. Yeah.
Yes, yes. It's like full acceptance of like, wow, what an experience, what a life, what a life. Yeah, and I think I love that her mom and Nikki both like echoed that in a way. Like they weren't I don't know, I don't think that they were really what are the words? It didn't feel like they came into the experience with this energy of you lived a life that was cut short and it wasn't, you know what I mean? Like there was something lacking here. By the end, you felt like, whoa, she really lived. You know what I mean? Like you didn't you didn't feel like there was anything lacking. You felt like, wow, you really lived. And I think that's the journey that I think we go on when we really dive into our sexuality and our how we express our sexuality is that you really feel alive, like you're fully in your being. Yeah, it's just so powerful.
Absolutely it is, yeah. And sexuality is something that for so many people can feel very dark, as in perhaps that means we don't know much about our sexuality, we're ignoring our sexuality, or perhaps we're even scared of our sexuality. It can be dark and taboo and something that so many of us push to the back burner and don't focus on exploring. And so seeing that, like her just dive into those waters, in the beginning, it kind of felt like she had so many unexplored parts of herself, like almost as though her sexuality kind of felt like a black hole within her. She felt that way, perhaps. And over the course, she's slowly just opening up and, yeah, exploring almost everything through sexuality. I think sexuality is so much more than just sexuality. We can explore anything through it, whether it be healing or growth or just different parts of ourselves. And so, yeah, it's rare. Once again, I think so many things that were demonstrated are rare, and it was really inspiring to see that taken on so thoroughly.
Yeah, yeah. And within only a few months. Which is, yeah, it's a full journey. Within just a few months, she was really able to uh go deep and come out the other end fully like transformed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we only saw, such a small portion of her life, and I agree with what you said about a minute ago or so, that it felt like she just had so thoroughly lived from even just that little brief moment in time that we got to see her experience, because she did experience so much, like the amount of discoveries and exploration she did is more than some of us might do for years and years, decades. She really just packed it all in on so many different levels.
Yeah, I think it does speak to like what does it mean to like live into your life, which is like, is it just to like check the bucket list items, or is it fully showing up, allowing this, mm, yeah, allowing life to like flow through you? Because I think sometimes we don't realize we're living such confined lives. We're like gathering the, I don't know, the life to-do list, get married, do this, do that. And it just feels like a checklist, versus getting to know who you are. And from there, being able to speak your desires as she does. You know, she starts out, I think midway, she's like, I don't know what I want. And like some of her younger partners are like, how could you not know what you want? You're older, you're an older woman. How could you not know the and she finds out. She finds out. And I think she does kind of like does kind of know by then, but she's just not sure if it's okay for her to ask for this specific thing. Like I only want to self pleasure with my panties on, with my vibrator across the room. You do, you know what I mean? It was like so specific, but I don't think she felt like she could ask.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I remember that scene with the one younger guy who was however much younger than her, but he was almost annoyed it came off like because she didn't know what she want. He kept asking her what feels good, what do you want, and she didn't know, or perhaps like you said, she just didn't feel okay expressing it. And that is something that's so powerful for absolutely anyone to overcome. It can be something that's so difficult, whether it be because of people pleasing or because of fear of rejection, all of those things. And I think she really overcame that and ended up kind of asking for absolutely whatever she wanted in every circumstance throughout the course of this, whether it was in her sexuality or with her doctor or just even her friendships. Her mom, she ended up taking more power and building a better relationship there slowly over time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also think so you mentioned like people pleasing, like what are the barriers that come up when we're struggling to ask for what we want? I actually think the show explored a barrier that we don't always talk about, which is disgust. So disgust is like because okay, so you have her neighbor guy who I realized doesn't even have a name.
Yes,
I looked up the character list because I was like, what is this guy's name? Did I miss it? He just never has a name
it says
till the
neighbor
very
guy on
end.
Google.
Yeah, yeah. But like her initial reaction to him was like just complete disgust, like yuck. Until she has her accidental orgasm. While listening to him orgasm or masturbate. And so disgust is one of those things where it can be, yes, totally authentic. You know what you like and you know what you don't. But sometimes disgust actually shows up as a protector in our nervous system. It's actually, our trauma will usually, is trying to provide something that will prevent us from seeking out what we see as like the dangerous, whatever is dangerous. So you can relate to this if you've gone through a bad breakup, like I did a couple of years ago. And for a long time, I just had this feeling of disgust for men, just all men in general. Didn't want to be around them, right? And it's just one of those things that can come up. And I see this a lot with the younger generation as well. I think Gen Z is kind of going through that as they're reflecting on patriarchy and how it's influencing men of all ages right now, and just feeling a little bit of disgust for men. And I completely understand it, and I think it's you kind of have to investigate it to see is this something I truly don't want, or is this disgust here because I'm afraid and I'm trying to keep myself safe. And we saw her be able to navigate that disgust and be like, wait, why does he turn me on? Or why does this, why do I like this? And she actually accessed a part of her that wanted dominance over him, which was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that was so cool. And I love that you brought that up. I didn't think of it quite in that context. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about that if you could. Just like how how do we one recognize that we are in this place of such high disgust, and how can we even come to terms that there might be something beyond it? Like what did yeah, like how can we move beyond the disgust or realize what is sitting in that layer right behind it?
Like, how can you tell the difference between this is just something I'm not really into versus this is disgust that maybe I should explore why I feel this way?
Yes. Yeah. How can we know when it might be discussed that should be explored a little bit further? Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, so I find that when we're witnessing something that is just not really for us, we don't really have such a strong reaction to it. It's the charge. I think the charge is how you know there's something more here. There's something more going on here that I need to explore. Because it's kind of like when you go into a buffet and you see that there's, I don't know, chicken tikka masala, and then you have orange chicken over there, and you have uh, broccoli over here. You typically don't have such a strong, like, oh, you know, I mean, sometimes we do, especially if it's made you sick in the past. But then you also know, that gave me food poisoning last time. I've had a bad experience. That's why this disgust is here. It's the charge, right? Typically, it's just like, oh, I don't want that. I'll just go towards what I like. And so when you have that strong charge, I think that's a sign to explore a little further and see what is here. Why do I feel such a strong repulsion? What is this either covering up or trying to point me
Mhm.
to?
Yeah. Okay, lovely. Yeah, thank you for clarifying a little bit more there. I always love hearing about that, getting a better understanding of perhaps what's going on in our subconscious or right behind the front layer of our minds. And I'm wondering, do you think that that might have also been a bit the case with the first time she went? I cannot believe I don't know the lady's name. Sonya's ex-girlfriend. She went to the furniture-esque store that she was working at, and the ex-girlfriend said you would need to practice submission to become a better dominant. And Molly was like, hell no, and left, and eventually came back and realized that it was something that she needed to experience. Would that be a good
Yeah.
example
I
of?
think that's an excellent example. And I think that also speaks to her trauma, her sexual trauma, because she had to, she had no choice, right? When she experienced that abuse. So it it's a natural response, right? And her willingness to go and explore it, I think that was like her actually choosing to not allow that to have power over her anymore. And I think that's kind of the journey you kind of go on with disgust is you're like, actually, there's my desire is on the other side of this disgust, this feeling, this trigger that's coming up. And I'm not going to let you stop me from getting to the desire. So I'm going to walk through the portal of disgust and figure out what this is so I can have what it is that I want.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Yeah, and I would imagine that could be really tricky for a lot of people, especially, it took her some time to be able to return and go into that act of submission. And even then, it was quite brief, and she did have a lot of different things come up for her, but there was noticeably so many different shifts and changes in her life outside of that directly after that. And I think that's another thing a lot of people might not consider is that in that experience of submission that Molly had, she was still in control in a sense. She knew that she was going to be respected, whether she said yes or whether she said no or whether she said go or whether she said stop. She knew that she was going to be respected for that. So she still, it was like a different route, I think, of taking power than what she had been doing, practicing her dominance sexually. She was still, I think, it felt to me as though she was still gaining this newfound power through the act of submission. Did you have any thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, because it's the relationship, right? It's actually knowing the other person is going to honor my yes and my no. And the experience, like if it's complete for me, it's complete. And she had such wonderful partners who allowed her to go into that, to be able to sit in that space, right? And I think that was part of the healing is having safety in her sexuality in the presence of someone else. And that's her whole journey actually, when we think about it, right? Wanting to orgasm with someone else, it's actually having that level of safety to go there with another person.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that can be a really challenging thing for so many women, especially. So many women struggle perhaps with orgasm in general, but then especially when it comes to having an orgasm with a partner present or having an orgasm from a partner. And I know that you do so much work around orgasmic mastery, so I'd love to hear anything else you could share with us about your thoughts on orgasm throughout this show, orgasm as a theme, orgasm as this bucket list item that she had, and eventually coming around to knock it off her bucket list. What could you share with us about orgasm throughout the
Yeah, I felt like her journey is just like a masterclass in unlocking your pleasure, right? And from the outside, you might think like, oh, you see all the blocks, you see where she's stumbling, but actually, as she's going through it, the process of learning to first honor her own yes and her own no, and see if she can explore that disgust that's coming up, and then learning how to that she can actually say yes and no to a partner and it be honored. Those are all like that's how you do it. The work that I do, and I think this is a misconception where people think um, conscious intimacy or just, learning to unlock your orgasm is just about learning how to touch yourself in a certain way and that's important. You want to learn what kind of stimulation feels good for you and your body, but a lot of it is this emotional work. It is this emotional work because when you feel safe, pleasure naturally happens. Pleasure naturally happens. Um, yeah, and I think it's just such a powerful journey for those who have survived trauma, those who are codependent or people pleasing. You kind of heal in the process because you encounter those barriers within yourself, and then you're like, actually, I can take this into all the other areas of my life as well.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing a little bit about that. And I love that you brought up safety once again. And I think, yeah, that was such a prevalent part throughout the whole show because she just didn't feel safe a lot of times in her own body due to her trauma it appeared. And she eventually was able to, continue to work through that, practice on being present, practice healing, and, eventually reach that orgasm at the end with the neighbor guy, which was
Yeah.
just that was such a closing moment. Of course, it didn't include every area of her life, but as far as her sexual journey, that kind of was like the last page of the sexual part of her journey.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Well,
Well, I don't even think I want to say, I don't even think, final point before we go, I don't even think that's the end of her sexual journey because one of the things I loved about this show is how they treated touch all throughout. Like the small moments where she's like, Doctor, please come and sit beside me while you tell me this news. Or Nikki saying to neighbor guy, we're not that close, do not come in for a hug. Or Nikki saying, I'm going to hold myself at the end. And like the moments of touch between her and her mom, you actually saw how like sexuality and intimacy it's just threaded throughout everything. Like, where does it start and end? Where does it start and end? Because it's not just the orgasm, the climax wasn't the climax. You saw it continue on into how she died and how, as they're talking about her having her final exhale, it's just like, oh, it's beautiful. I can't even communicate all the thoughts, but it just feels like to me, sexuality is just an extension of life. So for me, the thread was just it was continuous till the very end.
no, you're so right now that you say that, and it reminds me of something Sonia said in one of the first few episodes about how we need to change our definition of sex and sexuality. She actually just said that. I was just thinking about that and how it's so much more. I remember, I think Molly was just saying,
Ah,
why don't I like no, quote unquote normal sex? And she was upset with herself that she didn't like normal sex. And Sonia said, it's so much more than just penetration, or it's so much more than just what we think of when we think of sex. So thank you for making that point, and you're so right. It's throughout every moment of our lives, and it was something that I think Molly really woke up to, and so it became even more present throughout every moment, whether she was actively partaking in what we call sexual activity or she was just being herself. That sexuality was really present.
yeah, that line gave me chills. I wish I had written it down. It was so beautifully written and beautifully like said and performed by the actress. It was just, oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many moments that I was like, I should write that down.
I know. I put the subtitles on because it was so exceptional. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sonia was like her caregiver in a sense for like emotional support with the art of dying, essentially, you could
Mhm.
say. But she was also like a sex therapist in a lot of scenes. Like she was educated, she was knowledgeable, and she was there to support her. So she really played those two roles so beautifully. And I think they do relate so much, kind of like you said, they're all weaved together. So
Yeah.
that just amazing, just an exceptional characters all around, like you said.
All around.
Yeah.
Everyone was a heavy hitter. And I don't know. I was just like, wow, I'd like to meet the real people now. Right? They're just all so amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought every character was written so beautifully, even those with flaws like Steve.
Yeah.
Or, oh my gosh, I mean, I just remember the puppy guy. I even liked him too. I loved everyone, even the partners that were quirky or Yeah, I think the only person I didn't like was the guy, the New Year's hand job guy.
Yes. Yes, of course. And
I was
he
like,
was
okay,
written not
perfect.
to like him, if I would think
Yeah.
for another aspect of the story. Yeah. Yeah. And wasn't there in perhaps, yeah, like one of the last two episodes, Molly was kind of reflecting through, like, wasn't she in her state when she was starting to have some like um illusions and such, she was like seeing all of the guys, like she saw the guy with the beautiful penis that she had to humiliate and all of that, right? It was kind of like,
I loved him.
yeah, that she was seeing everyone. Yeah, there was just so many great characters and comedic moments, and of course, so much depth. Like you were able to lead us in this conversation today. So just all around, such a great show. And oh, I loved talking about it with you. I do not know why my brain couldn't get
Yeah,
that.
I get. I feel
Talking
like
about
I'm
it.
probably my mind's like I need to go have another cry.
Yeah, you were exceptional. Thank you for adding so many amazing insights to this conversation today and for kind of leading, especially me, into opening it up to some other perspectives, seeing some deeper things that I think a lot of people in their first watch, or perhaps I've even watched it twice, might not recognize until they hear about some of these other things that are going on, perhaps behind the scenes that you shared with us today. So, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation, Yanique, and sharing with us, being amazing, being an amazing woman in the world, the Pussy Queen, just all around.
Thank you so, so much. I mean, I feel like this show gave me a little bit of new life as well. So I just want to thank you so much for inviting me for this conversation. And I love the work that you're doing here as always. And I can't wait to see what else you put out on the podcast. And I hope everyone goes and watches the
Yes,
show
yes.
and comment and let us know. I'll be in the comments if anyone wants to chat and reflect if you've seen the show. Yeah, I'd love to reflect with everyone in the comments if you're watching on YouTube.
Yes, yes, you rock. You're awesome. Thank you again for being a part of it. And oh, could you share just about where people can find you if anyone's interested in exploring your work? You do a ton around orgasm, embodiment, all of those things. If you'd like to tell us about how people can touch base with you, whether it's in the YouTube comments or elsewhere.
Yeah, so I'm on YouTube. You can find me at Yanique Bell, and you can also find me at uniquebell.com and check out what's live, what's open. I do have a new program, Pussy Academy, where I've gathered all of my wisdom, all my orgasmic wisdom, and I'm just teaching it. So we have live classes every week, live group coaching every week, and you also get access to a library of programs, and I'm adding new stuff every month. So if you would like to kind of yes, go on the sexual journey, but I also like to feed into, well, how can we take this into our life so that we can live more orgasmically and lean into pleasure in every area of our life. If that interests you, then please do come and join us. And yeah, so those are the two places. Find me on YouTube. Also, just any other on my YouTube channel. You can also follow me on the other social media sites. But yeah, YouTube and my website are the places to find me.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for doing the wonderful work that you do, helping so many people. I just adore all of the different aspects of your work. I love that you focus on, the deeper self side of things. I believe that's what it's called. You have like a deeper self podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
That I love that. And then mixing that with sexuality. I think that just comes back around to what you've mentioned multiple times today about how everything is so interconnected. So for
Yeah.
everyone listening, as a reminder, Unique's website will also be in the show notes if you want to head over and explore with her there. And I just want to thank you one last time, Unique. Thank you so, so, so much for being here. And we can go cry separately after we get off this.
Thank you, Brielle, and thank you to everyone watching. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here today and taking one more step in embracing your most authentic, shame-free self. Stay sexy, stay safe, stay curious. Take care, everyone. Explore more at shamefreesex.com. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so that you never miss out on another episode. Bye, everyone.